Okay, we're good. Welcome. Good night. I'm done.
That was awesome. First meeting.
I'm nervous. I don't know about you guys, but I'm nervous. Welcome to those of you online. Welcome to those of you here in the room. It's good to see so many of you in the room. We are going to arrange the order a little differently. I promise we're going to get to all of the things you want to get to. We're going to start by just asking if the meeting was properly noticed. Lauren?
It was.
Okay. And do we have a quorum?
We do.
It looks like all the members of the board are here. I would like to just do a roll call vote in part to help people identify who's here.
Brian Kitzel.
Cindy Swisher.
Celia McFadden.
Bill Grindle.
Jim Hayes.
David Anderson.
And I'm Jackson Mummy. All right. With that, we do have a quorum. I'd like everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. Glad to have all of you here. If you had a copy of the agenda, you'll see that what we've done is to move the owner comments from before the meeting into the meeting, so it's now part of our official record. And that reflects the fact that we want to hear from you and we want to have those comments both here in person and online. What I want to say about owner comments is that we desperately as a board want your input and we want to hear from you, and we know that owner comments are important. We're going to do them in two different ways tonight. The first section of owner comments, we're going to ask you to address anything that is an action item on the agenda. And can you put the agenda up for people? Would it be possible to do that? We've got some action items to take, and then we've got some discussion items. If you would like to speak about one of the things that we're going to take a vote on tonight, whether it's the consent agenda or the action items agenda, please speak. If you've got a general comment that you want to make about something that's not on the agenda at all, this is the time to speak about that. The second half of the board meeting, can we get the door closed? The second half of the board meeting is for discussion. And you'll see on the agenda, if you could roll down just a little bit on the agenda, Patrick. You'll see that we have several, keep going. We're now trying to prove whether or not I really do have 20/20 vision. And so far it looks pretty white to me. That could be my eyes or bad, but somewhere in there we should have it. We have discussion items. If you want to talk about a discussion item, we're going to ask that you wait for that discussion, and then you will be invited to speak on that at a different time. Now, if you want to talk about something that's on the agenda and you want to talk about a discussion item, great. Glad to have two separate conversations. But our goal here is to have your comments around the discussion items in context so that we actually have some logical flow to what we're talking about. Does that make sense? I'm looking for nods, yes, I hope so. So that's what we're going to try and do tonight. Now, under the Florida laws, every resident is entitled to a minimum or a maximum of 3 minutes of speaking time. It's been pointed out that sometimes people feel they screw up all their nerve. They get up here to speak. We'll ask you to come up here if you're in the room or online, and then nobody responds, and that feels hard. And we don't want to do that. So we are going to, as a board, listen respectfully. We're going to listen carefully to what you have to say. And then I will direct management or some member of the board to respond. But what we can't do because of the amount of business we have to conduct is it's hard for us to engage in a dialogue with you about your comments. So we want to have a smart discussion, but it's hard to do that when we're trying to get through everything that we have to do. So please don't misunderstand our comments as we're not interested. It's just we want to hear you, we're going to deal with it, but it may not be within the context of this meeting. When we get to the discussion items, yeah, we may engage in a dialogue, right? And we may ask you to come back up here and talk to us at greater length. We're going to play it by ear and see what happens because we think it's important to have these conversations. So I hope that makes sense. I hope the rest of the board, that I've appropriately described what it is we want to do. Now, we have asked those of you in the room in the sign-in sheet to mark if you wanted to speak to the board. I have a sign-in sheet here, and then we will ask, after we've dealt with those of you here in the room, if those of you online wish to do so, and if you will, I guess, handle that information.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand. Yes, raise your metaphorical hand, your Zoom hand, or your Teams hand. Okay, we good? All right, so according to my list here, Barbara Reeb Sharma, you asked to speak. So if you would come up here if you'd like to speak.
I could pass for now. I'm gonna pass on that, and I'll redirect.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience tonight that wants to speak on the action items? That's the first place. This is not precluding you from speaking later. This is just on the action items. Okay, let me go to online. Do we have anyone that would like to speak online?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, do we need to give a second for people to figure out how to get their hand up?
Since action items or any other general.
Action items are general comments that are not discussion items.
Still no hands.
Okay, then at this point, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and we will come back to owner comments at a later point in time. The next item is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Cindy, is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Brian?
Comments. What I'd like to do is item G1 under the discussion items, which reads board residential update. That's really, shouldn't say the presidential update. I think it's really board update. And I'd like to move the introduction of new directors and the liaison roles up to right after adopt agenda, because I think we ought to introduce the directors, new directors before we start the meeting. So if I could, I'd move that up. And then item B5 regarding modification of the contract, I'd also say that we assign a board liaison to work with getting that done.
And that was, yes, regarding the K8 contract, right?
Yep.
And you want to add a discussion of assigning a liaison.
Assigning a liaison, then move G1 all the way up to after the agenda. So we introduce them to them and tell everybody who the liaisons are for the committee. So that helps up front to have that.
Okay. And I realize this screen is really difficult for people in the audience. Is there a way to angle it just a little bit so that the folks in the audience can see it as well? Is that possible, or am I? Yeah, that screen.
Or maybe in the future, have the third screen activated.
Yeah. Does that help?
Thank you.
Board members work better if they can't see what's there.
Are there any other motions to modify the agenda? David?
Yeah, I would, for item 4, which has to do with the dog park hours, I would just like to send that back. So save it for a future agenda, whether it's ready to be fully developed. Having read the materials, I think there's more background materials that are needed. So rather than deal with it tonight, I'd rather take it off the agenda and we'll put it back on when things are ready.
So you're sending it back to the dog park committee?
That's correct.
And you're the
And
liaison?
I'm the liaison, so I'll make sure that there were 3 things to be addressed there.
All right, so let me ask on that. Is there any objection to removing that item? Looking around the room? No?
No.
All right, so we will, the motion then will be to adopt the agenda. We'll remove item number 4 on the dog park, and we will move item G1 to the top of the agenda, and we will add in item G5, assigning a liaison. Is that correct? All those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. All right, so now, having moved item G1, the board update, we want to introduce our new directors and assign and talk about the liaison roles.
Can we have Patrick show that page up there?
Yeah. Which I'm sure you all can read. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sure.
Better. Okay. The board met on Friday to organize, and as you see, the officers are listed there. And we have 2 brand new board members, and I'd like them to introduce themselves just so that you all can hear from them and know who they are. So let me start with you, Bill.
Bill Grindle, new board member, having a one-year term, and looking forward to being on the board and a lot of interesting things to discuss.
Great. Thank you, sir. Bill has real skill sets in areas that no one else on the board has, and we're excited to have you on the board.
Thank you.
Jim?
Jim Hayes, I was fortunate enough to get a 3-year term, and glad to be here. And it is definitely an adjustment to move from a committee up to the board.
And again, like Bill, Jim has specific skills that are really unique on the board, and we're excited for your contributions as well. Returning to the board is, well, you know the rest of us, right? I don't have to go through that, do I? No. Let's talk about the liaisons to the board, and you see them on the list here. There is one mistake that I see, and as we go through, if anyone else notes anything, let me know. The CJC is the Celebration Joint Committee. This is made up of CROA and CNOA, and we have 2 members currently. That's David and Cindy. When the Celebration Company withdraws their seat on CNOA, their seats on CNOA, that is by charter something that will create a 3rd CROA seat, and at that time, Bill will sit that 3rd seat. We don't know when that'll happen. I think we're still waiting for that decision. Okay.
If I may, just a precision on that. I wouldn't call Bill an alternate. I would call him something else. Not like the dinner, not like the dinner.
Yeah.
No, but I would, it's really like in waiting. I don't know.
Future appointee. Future appointee.
Future appointee, thank you.
Okay.
Because alternate, I don't think that implies one of us wouldn't make it.
That implies I got to read the notes along the way.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Of course you do.
Good. Then we have charter committees, and the charter committees are set by Celebration's charter, and these are standing committees. And the board made a decision last week that one board member should serve as liaison rather than multiple board members. In order to simplify the process, the hours that board members invest are substantial already. And so we did this by request and also by experience or having worked with the group. The Architectural Review Committee, ARC, Bill is going to be serving as our liaison there. The Covenants Committee, Cindy is going to be serving as our liaison to that committee. Finance Committee, by charter, the treasurer of the board is the liaison to that committee, and that's Brian. He is serving as treasurer. Oh, thank God. Not because Cindy didn't do a great job, but it's nice to have Brian back in that role and back with the finance committee as well. Service area committees, Celia is doing that, and she's already reached out to, I think, every service area committee. So if you're on a service area committee, you've already gotten an email from her. So those are our charter committee liaisons. Then we have what we call standing committees. These are the ones that are in perpetuity, but they're not built into the charter. The dog park is David, who has been in that role before. In Parks and Recreation, I have been relieved of duty, oh, thank God, and Brian has taken over that particular role. And so I know he'll do a wonderful job there. Celia is going to be our liaison to special events, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think, and a great experience there. And then technology, David is going to be our liaison. I want to make one point about technology. Jim mentioned it's a big move from a committee to the board. Jim was the president of the technology committee, and he graciously decided, and really was gracious in saying, I think it's better that I step away from that committee as a liaison, but I'm sure you'll continue to have input there. So just to be clear. Then we have some community partner liaisons that are important, certainly for us. One of the most important is our relationship with the foundation. We're glad to have members of the foundation, including Mike Jackson here tonight. David is our liaison to that. It shows Jim's name on it. That's a mistake. We did not that Jim's a mistake, but we didn't appoint anyone to that spot. Yeah. The next grouping is the CCDD, and Jim is our liaison to the CCDD. We felt that that was a good link because of the importance of the two committees working together. We are looking forward to a healthy relationship with CCDD. Condo Council, Celia has been the star of the Condo Council for the last year, putting that together, and she is returning to that organization. So I think I've got all of them. Am I missing any of the liaison roles? As you can see, there's a lot of things going on. So if you're trying to figure out who to talk to, that's what we are trying to do. And I think that's everything for that item. Anything else to add to that?
That will be on the website and everything, so people can find it, right? Perfect.
Okay, great. All right, next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the CROA board meeting of February 9th, 2022. Obviously, we have a couple of members who are not here for that. We're not part of that board. I will say to the audience, both online and here in the audience, in the room, a typical board packet for us is about 100 to 200 pages in length. And before we come to the board meetings, our board members are expected to read and digest and discuss what's in that board package. And one of those pieces is the minutes. We do look at it, we review it. So when we come to these meetings, we can move through these things relatively efficiently. So having said that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any conversation or discussion?
I have and I've never noticed this before.
Go ahead.
Kevin was not at this meeting.
Right.
Should he be signing as secretary if he was not at that meeting?
I believe, go ahead, Brian, you want
I believe the new secretary will be the person signing it.
So that needs to be changed on the copy that we have.
to? Okay. Any other changes to the minutes? All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, item E, financials at December 31st, 2021. Is that Ariel or is it Brian? Brian.
That'll be me for right now.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we will publish in the March, we have our next meeting is March 16th, a week from now. I'm hoping we'll publish December 31st in there. What we have been doing is we had a meeting with the finance committee about a week ago. We made a bunch of balance sheet reclasses and stuff like that. So in the next package, we should have the CJC, CROA balance sheet, and service area balance sheets and the CCS balance sheet. So we've got the whole thing in there as of December 31st. We were trying to get December 31st where everything tied down from the balance sheet perspective, and then we'll have the roll forward going forward. And I think the transition with the financials will be predominantly done.
Any other comments? I want to just take a minute to thank Cindy for her work as treasurer last year. I think doing this during the RFP, during the transition, moving from our prior management company to our current management company was an extraordinary challenge, and I appreciate very much what you did. So, thank you. All right, no other comments on the financials? All right, now the next item is action items. I don't know if you can see that or not. We have reordered action items again a little bit differently. There are some items that are really non-controversial, worthy of great discussion. And we put those in what we're going to call a consent agenda, which means in a moment I'll ask for a vote on all of those items that are in the consent agenda. The board has already looked at those items, they've reviewed them, and I will ask before the adoption of the consent agenda whether any board member wishes to remove something from the consent agenda. If they do, then it will move into the regular agenda where we'll discuss it. The reason we're doing this is not to ramrod or run something past you or sneak something past you. It's just to get our business done a little more efficiently and spend our time on the things that we know are of greater interest and need to be discussed as a board. Is that a fair explanation to the board members? So you will see on the consent agenda, there are 4 items. You can see them on the agenda there. I am not going to read all of them. I'm simply going to say that we've got 4 items, and now I'll ask the board, are there any of those 4 items that you wish pulled from the consent agenda? Hearing nothing, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items A, B, C, and D.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Discussion?
I just wanted,
Go ahead.
it struck me that this, on D, that vehicle's only, I think it's a 2016, and it just struck me as odd that we're already replacing the transmission.
So let me just back up for 1 second.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. If you want to discuss the item, it should be pulled from the consent agenda, because typically our point is, we've already looked at it and reviewed it. So if you want it pulled, I'm glad to
No,
pull
it was
it.
just a comment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, never mind.
Any other comments?
make a comment on items B and C. Those come from Artisan Park Service Area Committee, and they've already approved it. And typically, the board honors those.
Right, and that's why we're putting these things on the consent agenda. It's just, it's for efficiency more than anything else. But again, the board has reviewed these, they've looked at them, and we have that opportunity. So now, all those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent agenda items pass. Now we get to the fun stuff. If you could scroll down, maybe you're already there. We now come to action item number 2, a motion to approve design engineering proposal by KPM Franklin for Lot D in the amount of $132,687 out of the CROA capital funds expenditure. Before we can discuss it, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second? Celia seconds. Open for discussion.
Well, I have presented comments Monday afternoon on the document. I think the document is generally okay. I just think that there's some questions that could be tightened up. And if there's a way to send those questions back to them and get an answer in the next week, since we're going to meet again next week, that would be my preference.
Right.
I never saw your comments.
I put them in the email wherever town hall things go.
Oh, they got to go to the board. Okay, so there's an email address called CROA board, and that's where it goes, because if it went to Cyranet, it never made it to the board.
Yeah, I never saw it either.
It's a town hall.
So when you're going in, you should CROA board, and you add it, it immediately comes up with the CROA board, and then it goes to all the board members, and then if you want to copy Lauren, it goes to Lauren, and that's how we do it.
It's interspersed with all Lauren's.
So it was to Sarah, so it never made it to any of us. Could I take a picture to set? Would it be all right with you, Jackson, if I took a moment to kind of set the big picture for this?
Yeah, I was about to do that, but if you want to do it, go ahead.
Well, if you want to do it, I don't care, but I mean, I want to set it.
Let me take a first crack at one part of this, and then we'll dig in a little bit further. Previously on pickleball, we have talked about this for a period of almost 2 years in various forms, and we have held meetings, board meetings. We have entertained task forces and subject matter experts. We have gone to our recreation committee. We have held Q&As. We have been engaged in a variety of forms of communication. The decision about an amenity never comes easily. It is always a decision of allocation of resources, of space, of what we want to be doing. This process started with a variety of surveys that you've heard about. It went through a variety of refinements. We asked various entities to get involved. As you heard Brian say at the annual meeting, if we're being perfectly candid, our previous management company wasn't sure what to do with it, and so they said, let's create something called a task force. The task force members stepped in and offered their expertise and their experience and their assistance. We also engaged our recreation committee to offer their experience and their expertise. And then the board weighed in, and we went and got additional information from a variety of sources, including engineers and others. We have heard from lots of people in the community who are in favor of pickleball. We have also heard from lots of people in the community who are pickleball neutral. And we have heard from people that are completely opposed to pickleball. No decision will satisfy every part of the community. But the point of a board is that after hearing all of that input, we make the best, most rational decision that we can. As we led up to tonight, what we had done was to begin to decide first, was there a need for pickleball? And the answer, in my view at least, was that there was. We had enough people playing to justify creating some amenity. That was a number built on rented court space for a few hours a week. And when we asked our new management company, they said, pickleball exists in all of our communities that are comparable in size to yours. We know that it is a growing activity. Will it continue to grow? I have no idea. But I think it's reasonable to assume that it will have activity and there will be people to play. Then we asked ourselves, if there are enough people interested in playing, where do we put this? And we looked at a lot of possibilities, right? I mean, we looked at a lot. And after weighing all of those possibilities, the board concluded that the best option was Lot D in the Civic Corridor near the Celebration Community Fields Complex. I'm not going to tell you it's a perfect solution or it's a perfect location, but it seems to be the best that we could come up with, and it satisfied several needs. It gave us some parking, it gave us access to bathrooms, to lighting, it gave us the ability to expand and to use other parts of that resource, Lot D, for whether it was parking or sports or other things down the road. So we made those two decisions. One, we're going to have pickleball. Two, it's going to go on Lot D. The next question was, how big and how much do we spend on it? That's where we are right now. We have a design drawing for, I believe it's 8 courts. Is that correct? And we have gone to 3 engineering companies for what we call an RFP, a request for proposal, to tell us what they would do to set up an engineering study and to start to put in the infrastructure and the plans that we need. The proposal before us tonight is a proposal for their professional services. 2 companies chose not to bid, I believe, is my understanding of the 3 that we asked for. A third, KPM Franklin, indicated that they wanted to bid, and they did, and we have that proposal in the board package, which was made available to the public. So we've talked about exit ramps. I'm almost done, I promise. We talked about exit ramps on the project. Tonight represents another possible exit ramp. We could say, nope, we're not going to go any further. But if we do take this decision, we now move towards the next step, which is actually getting the plans and seeing what it would cost ultimately to put all of this in place. We will spend money tonight, as you see, $132,000. So it's serious money, and it's a serious decision, and the board has spent a great deal of time talking and thinking about it. So I think that frames it up. I'll turn it over to Brian.
And I'll add to that and change a little. We've actually been discussing pickleball since late 2019. So we're at 2.5 years. It is easily the most discussed topic in the history of the universe. It dominated the election. It dominated my life for the last 18 years. I don't run into anybody in this town who doesn't ask me what's happening with pickleball. So when people say we haven't discussed pickleball, I can't go there. It is. I see people in the audience smiling. Yeah, it's there. So we've had a ton of conversations. Jackson mentioned we were at the Recreation Committee. We've talked about things in public. We've talked about things at darn near every board meeting. What we had KPM Franklin do first was come up with concept designs. We looked at a concept design that had Field 1 and Field 2 versus Lot D, and we looked at other places too. We had a Recreation Committee. When I went into the Recreation Committee, I was really thinking Field 1, Field 2 would be the solution. Came out of there saying, okay, Lot D really is going to be the solution. The reason Lot D became the solution, we talked about this at the annual meeting, is the Special Events Committee and a lot of the athletic people wanted an additional parking lot. So we've got 50 parking spaces there. We're adding another asphalt parking lot with another 50 spaces. So there'll be 100 spaces right there that can be used. Originally, yes, we talked about a lot of pickleball courts. We got it down to 8 pickleball courts that we feel comfortable with. And in the quotes that we have, we take the rest of Lot D, we make it what's called pad ready, which means we smooth it all out and everything. It's going to be in grass. It could be used for flag football. It could be used for lacrosse. It could be used for soccer. It could be used for parking for a major event. So it takes all of Lot D and makes it very usable. And I'm just going to tackle things, you know, there were questions about how many people actually play pickleball. So before the annual meeting, I actually, and I'm in the liaison to pickleball, I asked the pickleball group, give me a good list. So they went back and re-interviewed every single person who wanted to be on what they really call, it's a roster is what they really have, because they're not a pickleball group, they're a roster, they play. And we had 177 residents who all re-signed up saying, we play pickleball regularly. We had another 70 locals. So let me define a local. A local is somebody who used to live here and they moved to Dr. Phillips. They moved to Lake Nona, but they've got a bunch of friends and they still come here and play. I play golf. I don't play the golf, but there's a lot of people that I play golf with who have been here forever. They moved to nearby and they come in. So that's 247 people right there. And a greater percentage of residents are playing pickleball than actually are playing soccer for our soccer programs. And I'm not complaining about that. I understand you want to get people. We got another 114, 15 people who don't live here locally, but when they come to the area, they come here to play. So we've got a lot of people who come to play. So people who want to play, we've got it. One of the questions has been, does the board have the ability to do this? So actually under duties, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, any acquisition or development of $250,000 or more shall result in a board presentation to the community of the total project cost, including acquisition or development cost, outfitting costs, contingency for overruns, reserve balance impacts, future operating cost, and funding alternatives. So we've talked about this a ton. We've spent about $9,000 on the concept drawing. Tonight's $132,000, and that's probably a little light if I'm honest. I don't want to mislead you at all. We should not spend the $132,000 unless we say we're doing pickleball on Lot D. That would just be a financially dumb decision. So if we both go down this path, we're saying pickleball on Lot D is going to happen. And pickleball on Lot D means the additional parking, it means the pickleball, and it means the pad ready for the rest. So if you spend about $132,000 there, we have an estimate from the engineering firm talking with all the different consultants. The construction phase of the whole Lot D was estimated at $515,000 on top of the 132, on top of the 8. So you're probably, and you know, you're going to have to figure for a little overrun. So I've used a rough number like $750,000. When you look at the run rate cost for it, I asked the pickleball group to look at what it costs to maintain a course. There's national statistics, there's other ACE standard course. Average cost on an annual basis is about $11,000 to maintain a pickleball complex. Because once you pour the concrete, once you got the asphalt, you're pretty much done there. We know that the run rate cost on a parking lot is just not that much. And a grass field is a grass field. You know, we've got grass parks all over town. So I don't see run rates as a lot. I don't see the reserve impacts as a lot. You've got the initial cost there to get it up. The responsibility of the board is to discuss this in public. Bill said he had comments. Fine, we'll look at his comments. I think we still, I was waiting for tonight's conversation. Anyway, we still need to have Larson, Slayton, and Associates look at the contract to do that. So we, you know, we're really approving the concept subject to legal review. We could get your comments in legal review. But what we're really doing now is we're saying, what I believe is we're saying, okay, pickleball and the reformation of Lot D with the 3 components is going to happen. That's what this conversation is about, in my opinion.
Thank you. Other board comments? Dave?
Yeah, just to clarify, you talk about exit ramps and you talk about, I think you used the term done deal. Tonight is one exit ramp, $132,000. The drawings get drawn, and then that project goes out to bid to construction companies. And should those come in at the level that you're expecting, the total cost may be $750, so the cost for construction might be $500,000 or $600,000. If it comes in that way, we still have to vote on that. If it comes in at many millions, that's an exit ramp. So it's not quite done, but we're pretty doggone sure because we have good estimates of what those dollars would be to actually construct, which would be a different company unless this one happens to have the skill set to actually bid. So just to clarify, it's our intent to move forward. It's not small money, but it's really a serious intent that this is where we want it. We're looking at 8 courts, we're looking at lighting, we're looking at parking, and we've already identified, if you will, the run rate. So, thank you.
Celia, did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
No, I will. Actually, I do.
Yeah, I thought you might.
So when you're looking at this, and like David said, we don't know what it's going to cost to build this. But we also have to realize this isn't just pickleball that is going to benefit from this. This is going to be parking for special events, and this is going to be grass field for the sports to continue to play on there also. So it's just not pickleball. We're opening it up to a lot of different things.
Okay. Jim?
So this is, I think, difficult for Bill and myself. I won't speak for him too much, except to say that. Because, and I want to kind of divide this up into process and proposal. So we weren't part of the process. We didn't help shape the ideas that went into the proposal. I personally, as I've mentioned to a couple of board members today, would like to see if we can insert the possibility of other amenities going in at the same time. That may be too much to work on, but I'd like to potentially have that discussion in the near future. But the proposal itself, based upon what I was thinking and looking at, comes in where I thought it would. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to evaluate the proposal as it is right now with kind of a suggestion that we look into those other things, that perhaps we could put in a tennis court or a basketball court. Maybe that's too much. Maybe we're too late in the game, but this is where I'm starting from. So that's my suggestion, my discussion.
I would only say, I don't think we're too late in the game. I think it's not germane to this, as you're pointing out, process and proposal. This proposal gives us a certain amount. We could make changes to it, I assume, but Brian, go ahead.
So just to ask a clarifying question. So you're saying, would we consider putting a basketball court on the end of Lot B? Is that?
Like additionally, maybe right next to the court. So I don't know where, but I'm saying would it be possible to see if we could address some other amenity deficiencies, if you will?
The answer to that question is obviously yes. It's also not a foreign question. I have had people ask me, could we put on a basketball court or something? So the answer is yes, we could.
Yeah, we just, but
I wouldn't put it right by the pickleball, then I would put it all.
No, I mean,
there
are other questions I think we have to answer,
Yeah.
but I think the point that I want to make, the distinction I want to make to clarify is that it doesn't really impact this decision
Right.
tonight. It's something else to think about. Cindy, did you have any thoughts or
No.
comments?
No.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I think Jim's point is a very good one. I would not want to delay this decision. I think 2.5 years in the making. Let's get on with this one, but I don't want to say fast track because that sounds a little sloppy, but let's be aggressive with your suggestion, but let this one go on its track, and maybe there's some efficiencies 4 months from now when we get into the build process.
Bill?
No, that's what we talked earlier today. My thoughts are, one, we're putting in overflow parking, and I'm not sure if that's addressing a need or if that's just a placeholder. Because if it's a need, then
It's a need.
It's an need.
that's going to impact what else we do with the field. And maybe some of it could be for something else. And the other things are my standard thing is, I don't know what the groundswell is, how many people really want to play basketball, how many people really want to do other things. And I think we need to evaluate that and also see if there's other locations in town.
For basketball, you mean?
Well, for any of those, for anything and everything, I think we just need to, down the road,
Again, to be
survey
clear,
spaces.
yeah, to be clear, this decision puts pickleball on Lot D. We are not revisiting where it goes.
Right.
Okay, I want to be clear.
Right.
Brian, did you have something else?
So as the conversation here evolves a little. So obviously, KPM Franklin is a design engineering, civil engineering type firm. So they design basketball courts, they design, make things for pickleball and stuff like that. So adding basketball to this would not be a huge ask. It would really just be an amendment to the contract, which would take it to 100 and some 45,000 or whatever the number would be to design a basketball court. I don't see that as huge. The need thing, if we were going to actually look at that, really putting a basketball court there versus somewhere else, we ought to ask the recreation committee to look at it darn fast.
Yeah.
I know Dory's had opinions on this in the past, but she's given them to me. Which is surprising. So, that is not a hard change to make. We've said here and we've talked about, I do want to say, like when they gave us the $515,000 estimate, they do this for a living. They do this a lot. They talk to all the consultants and contractors and engineers that they work with on all the different pieces. So I don't really think there's a radical error in what they've said. Is there inflation risk and everything else in this day and age? Yes.
All right, so what I would like to do, Cindy, do you have something?
Now I have something to say. So, so just to be clear, no matter this preps that whole strip for whatever we want to do going forward.
I understand. Yes.
So this makes perfect. We're not just going through this exercise. It's $132,000 just for the pickleball court. It affects that whole strip there. So once this is done, then, it will be easier just to look forward to, okay, we've got it done. Maybe we don't need this much parking. Maybe this field isn't being used as we had hoped, the grassy field, and we can put some, but
Go
that's,
ahead, Brian.
yeah.
I do want to say, I think the additional 50, I think all the people who are out there, whether it be sports related, whether it be the special events, would tell you that the 50 plus the additional, there's a huge parking issue.
Mhm.
Everybody was happy with the solution that gave a pad ready field that would have grass that could be used for sports and for parking. There's zero doubt in my mind that we have a parking need. I think for the major events, you have the bigger parking need. I think the 100 handles most of it, and you could have kids, you could have adults, whoever using the grass field, whatever size that grass field ends up being.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that looking at the KPM thing, it seems I just assume it's for the whole site because it says Lot D, so.
The whole thing.
And some of the stuff, the survey, the topographic survey, they have to redo the monuments on the edges to make sure that we know where the actual property ends and so on and so forth. Those things will not be wasted for anything else we choose to do as the second phase.
So what I would like to do, Brian, you made the motion. I wonder if you would be amenable to an amendment that says that it was subject to review by Larson and Associates and review of Bill's red line comments.
And Larson might be the right place to look at the comment.
Yeah.
Because they're more about, well, you say we're going to do this, and I'm saying like, how does that get done? How many? And why can't we get two of those instead of just one of those?
Right,
That
so
kind of stuff.
I don't, Celia, you made the second. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, it's some of what you're getting down to is very specific. And
Very.
We'll have a board member or two, maybe you'll be a brave volunteer who will actually work with the engineering firm as we hone and refine some of this. But everything comes at a dollar and cents level. So, and that becomes part of the give and take.
No, understood.
I'm going to take two more comments and then we'll go to a vote. Jim?
One last future consideration from me. I would like us to consider having key card access to the amenities that are put in there. If it's just pickleball, if it's anything else, so that we can have some data, usage data available to us, as opposed to just anecdotal evidence or stories. Also, we should, no one has talked about reusability in terms of, you know, what if we do put in a basketball court and pickleball is hugely popular, you know, how can we, and the basketball court turned out to not be a good place for people to play basketball, for instance. Can we reuse that? And then vice versa.
Right. So thought about that a lot, actually. That's why I would put the basketball court down by Lot D. It's got a bouncing basketball and everything, which is different than the pickleball. You create some differentiation of space, which is there. Worst case scenario with a bunch of pickleball courts, if pickleball died as a sport and was outlawed, you know, you could convert those to tennis courts pretty easily. So that is very usable. One basketball court probably results in us scrapping the downtown Lakeside basketball court and turn it into parking or something else. Anyway, we're going to use one basketball court forever. Basketball's not going away. I don't think pickleball's going away. I think I would have them on different ends, but it functions very easily.
With that, I am going to bring us to a vote. We're going to do a roll call vote.
What, just Jetson? There's a gentleman there standing.
What we had asked was for comments at the beginning, and I don't think you were here at the beginning.
I was on the phone.
Oh, did you? Okay. Go ahead, make your comments. Come on up and tell us who you are, please.
Yep. Good evening, Alec Ross, 952 Starling, president of Little League. So,
And are you an owner or renter?
I'm an owner.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Alex.
So I don't disagree with anything that's being discussed right now. I know that everything is not a zero sum. I just want to ask the question, is the funding that goes to this being taken away from other needs of the community of our existing assets? And Brian, we've had some conversation on it.
Okay, let me address that first. Thanks, Alex. This is paid for, if you look at the agenda, out of something called the capital funds expenditure. The capital funds expenditure is funded from two primary sources. One is the transfer of the sale of homes. So if you sold your home in the last 5 years, Alex, you paid a transfer fee into that capital funds. If you've owned your home for 10 years, you haven't paid anything into it. The second place is from an apartment recreation fee that's charged to all tenants in the association. Now, starting with the budget this year, there's about $2 per household that is going into the capital funds. So there is no money coming from your functional paying maintenance or other programs. But it is the right and responsibility, at least in my view, of the board to allocate how we spend money, whether it's for pickleball or the community fields complex or tennis or Little League or anything else. So that's where the money is coming from specifically. So,
And I'll just add a little. At December 31st, we have operating cash of $1.9 million. That runs the town on an operating basis and stuff like that. We have replacement reserves, which are protected of about $2.4 million. That goes to fixing up things like existing amenities. And we have another $2.1 million of capital improvement funds, which goes for new amenities. So that, and this year with Island Village and everything else going strong, we're expecting, I'm going from memory here, $900,000 of additional capital funds. So this is coming out of capital improvement funds. People have talked about before stuff like a community center and other things like that. We're still actively thinking about investing all those. So we've got lots of sources of funds to do different things with. We're attacking things in an order that meets the needs of the community.
all right. Now, thank you for your comment and your question. I'm now going to call the vote, and we're going to take a roll call vote. So I'll start at the end. Brian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Celia?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's approved 7-0. The next item on the agenda is a motion to approve a new security company for Lakeside and the Celebration Community Fields Complex. I'm going to turn this to Lauren to overview it for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we had a previous security, sorry.
we had a previous security company share group that we were not fully satisfied with their services. So at the last board meeting, you approved the cancellation of that contract. They were so notified and given the 30 days notice. Since then, Nikki has secured 3 separate proposals for security services. The first one, I believe, is Allied, and they are the ones that are used by Lexon.
No, that's,
Oh,
was
sorry.
that secure one?
Secure One, sorry. Secure One is the one that's used by Lexon downtown. They are the most expensive of the group, but they also hire only former law enforcement or military personnel with at least 10 years of experience, I believe, in those professions. They are also armed and will be wearing uniforms and in marked cars. The second one is another well-known company, and I believe that one's the Allied. Apex. I'm sorry.
You missed it by just this much. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I don't have the notes in front of me. So Apex is well-known and is well-known by Lexon as well and has great references. They're kind of in the middle of the road in terms of the pricing range. They also have marked cars and uniformed personnel. The third one, I would not necessarily recommend, but they were a proposal that we received, so I wanted to put it in front of you.
Okay. Let me just ask one question about Apex, and I'm not sure if you know the answer. I saw that the first company you mentioned had an armed guard. Does Apex do that? And is it management's view that we need an officer with a weapon or not?
I don't believe you need an officer with a weapon. It was just one of the items that was part of that company. And no, the other companies do not have armed personnel.
So are all of their guards armed at Secure One?
Yes.
So at this point, what I would do is to entertain a motion to approve one of these companies, and then a second, and then we can discuss. So David?
I'd like to make a motion to approve, let me just say it right. Apex, which was one of the 2 recommended by management, but it's also the one that does not have the armed officers. So I'd like to make a motion to have a contract issued to Apex.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Celia has seconded. Discussion. Brian?
What's missing here is, what does management think we truly need? I mean, I worry that we're filling something without actually taking a second here to say what is truly the need.
After discussion with Nikki and based on incidents that have occurred since we have not really had service from Share Group and even during their service, most of the issues happen on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So taking a step back, I would recommend that you scale back security services to Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. That would
What about
also,
when school's out?
when school's out, we could do more seasonal as well. But I think while school's in, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays are our big nights. And then you could scale up as needed based on seasonality. But from what we're seeing now, it's really Friday, Saturday, and Sundays.
And what are we trying to manage? What's actually happening?
We are managing people skateboarding in the tennis courts, people jumping fences at Lakeside who shouldn't be there, people out at the complex that shouldn't be there, the vandalism that occurred in the bathrooms at the complex and other things like that. The recent vandalism at Lakeside as well, on the sidewalk. Those are the things that we're trying to address.
And on Friday and Saturday nights, Lakeside Pool being,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry. And on Friday and Saturday nights, Lakeside Pool is a major issue with all the kids going in there, throwing each other in the pool. There needs to be security there to at least control what's going on or throw them out.
Comments? Other comments?
What is this security firm going to do when they see this happening? Do the kids listen to them?
Actually, they do. There was last year, when I first got on the board, I was at Food Truck Friday. He said oh, I don't have access into the pool. I go, what do you mean you don't have access into the pool? He goes, I don't have an access card, so I stand on the outside of the fence and I tell the kids, don't make me come in there, you know, and they usually will listen. They listen to him until we discussed with management getting him a key access card to get into the pool so he can tell them, get out. You can't be throwing each other in the pool with clothes on, and they'll listen to him. But there has to be a presence there, and there isn't now.
And I think the key was having a uniformed designated security personnel. What we were running into with share group was people couldn't even tell that they were security personnel. They just looked like somebody walking down the street with a jacket on.
And I know we're going with the option that'll have a car.
Yes.
David?
So Brian's point of stepping back, I think, is also important. While we may hire this company for basic needs like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and these two targeted locations, I think it's also important to step back and look at what else do we need to do our responsibility of protecting our assets. For example, if people are jumping a fence, do we need to change the fence style / structure? And that'll be a cost. What is our camera coverage? What is the CCFC opening, closing access? If it's locked down, is it locked down or is it open certain hours? Is there other staff there? So I think we need to step back and look at the larger picture. That's not to negate this, but it's to complement this. So I think a larger review of what else can we do to protect our assets.
And am I correct, Lauren, that management is asking us to make this decision now? That we need a security company now?
We do, yes.
Okay.
That's right.
At least for Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Let me go to Cindy and then I'll work through.
But I was gonna say, I wrote down the numbers, the annual cost for the three, and actually Apex is the lowest. So that's the one that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
But, and I know you guys hate when I say things like this, but considering Secure One, I know they're expensive. But when I worked at the bank, we hired security officers that were either off-duty policemen or retired policemen. Then they went to a security firm. There's a big difference and I don't know what it's their demeanor. There's something they exude like strength and they're like, don't mess with me and that kind of stuff. Some of the folks that they sent to my branch, one guy was creepy. Another guy was, just kind of Bernie Fife-ish, if you will. I'm sure all three of these are good companies, but not that they have to carry a gun, but I really believe that there's something to be said for that professionalism when you're dealing with, teenagers or even the fellow that we had talked about earlier via email that we found out with the holes in the parks and stuff like that, just in case we come into contact with them. And especially if we hired Secure One, it would be about double what we're paying the security for the same amount of hours. If we're considering scaling back the hours significantly, if you're only talking about 3 days out of 7, I don't know if there would be any appetite for trying Secure One, at the reduced hours, which would reduce the cost for a period of time less than a year, if that's possible, and just see if we think it makes any kind of difference and if it's worth spending that extra money, which may, if we only go with the 3 days, may end up being just what we're spending for this firm we're using now.
I see Brian running his calculator, so let me go there and then I'll come to Celia.
So all I'm gonna do is give you some numbers. So we have budgeted 52,000. If we went with the secure, that would 3 days, that would be 45,000 and the other one would be $34,000. So we could actually, if we're changing it to 3 versus 7, both of them would be less than we have budgeted. So it's flexibility we didn't have before.
Celia?
So like I said, we have to take into consideration, school's going to be getting out in May. We have the whole summer that these parks need to be monitored, other than Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And also, would any of this, would management take into consideration providing any kind of security going to, Spring Park over there?
I think that's something that that's open for discussion with the board.
Because that is also a major issue on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night.
Jim?
I just want to confirm, with security one, there is no unarmed option. Is that correct?
You know the answer.
Is
Is there an
Unarmed
unarmed
option?
option?
I'm not sure, I can ask.
It seems to me we go, I think a couple things are important now. One is we need something sooner rather than later. So I would want to move expeditiously on this. Second, I would go with the, if you will, the least intense option. To jump into armed officers, I think is too far to go. I am willing to go there if we need to go there, but let's try it not going there. And third, just in a logistics way, should that not work out, should there be, to Cindy's point, someone that felt creepy, or if we felt that we needed to adjust, is the contract such that we can give a 30-day notice?
Yes.
Okay, so we could ramp it up or we could change as needed. But I think
Okay,
time is of the essence.
all right. Any final comments?
I just agree with, I pretty much agree with what David's saying. I'd rather start in the middle and then go up if we have to. But either way, they have to be managed. So we need incident reports. We need somebody looking at them to make sure that the guy isn't there for 3 weeks and then we find out he's creepy, because
He followed me.
it's a position that has a lot of turnover in the industry. So you have to be careful that the guy that you loved goes to another contract for them, and all of a sudden you got somebody like, where'd he come from? And we wouldn't have picked him. So it just needs some hand holding to make sure you're getting what you think you want.
Right.
I think we made a mistake when we chose the past company because we went cheap instead of what we need. So from that perspective, I'll support Cindy. We have a board meeting in a week. Could we possibly have management do a little bit more research, give us better numbers? So if it's 3 days, is it 3 days a weekend or is it 4 days a weekend? What will either one of them accept that limited thing? And if we needed more in the summer, what would it be? So I don't think we need all the marketing materials now. I think we need a one-page proposal for each company with management. And if we need Spring Park, this is the first time I've heard about it. So, okay, if we need Spring Park, what does that mean? Let's do it once right and then hire the proper firm for the right reason.
I actually
I
think
would
there's no
entertain
school
a-
next week.
I'm sorry, what?
I actually think there's no school next week.
Spring break,
Spring break, so kids are home.
beginning this Friday.
So what I'm hearing is that what I need some direction on here is, do we need to make a decision tonight or can we defer this 1 week? And I need to hear from you.
You can defer one week.
Feel like we can. All right. Then I would entertain a motion to table this motion for 1 week and place it on the action items for the March 16th agenda.
I'll make the motion and you're clear on what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So and if you need to work with Celia or Cindy a little on where we need is great, but then
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All
I
right.
think we have to withdraw the previous motion too.
No, we don't. It's a motion to table.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
I studied Robert's rules in school.
Know nothing about the law.
So who made the motion and who seconded?
You don't need to worry.
I'm the secretary.
Because it doesn't matter because okay, trust me on this one.
Okay.
All right. Now we come to the discussion section of the agenda. If you could scroll down for us, Patrick.
Non-compliance.
Oh, the non-compliance. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Okay. Item number 5 is a motion to initiate the finding process for 16 non-compliance items, not 19. This is not, if you are looking online, you will not see the actual addresses. This is confidential information, but the board members have these. So the chair would entertain a motion. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
For the purposes of the public, what we're doing here is the legal process to begin sending these properties that are currently not in compliance with covenants back to the covenants committee for decisions and inspections and the potential to implement fines. It just starts the process. Nothing else happens, but we're required by law to do that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And then finally, number 6, the motion to approve one resident fee waiver request. Again, is there someone make that motion? Second?
Second.
All right. Again, for the public, what we're doing is that from time to time, residents will make a request to have fees waived for various reasons. That information is confidential. It's presented to the board. It's relatively small amounts of money, and by that I mean typically less than $100. And so we have a management recommendation for the first item. The one property that's there recommends waiving those fees. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that is approved. Now, well, Brian's out of the room. Quick. All right. We now turn to the discussion item. I want to say what I said again at the beginning. This is another opportunity for residents, either online or here in the room. We have we have 4 items open for discussion based on the time. Our goal is to finish by 8 o'clock, so we're about an hour in. If you wish to speak when we get to that discussion item, if you'll raise your hand, somebody here will nudge me and let me know. If you're online, raise your hand and we'll ask you to engage. We will go through each of these discussion items. With respect to these, I will ask the board members for their comments first. So if you've got your hand up, we'll see you and know you, but we're not going to ask you to come to the podium or online until we've heard from all the board members so that we get those discussion items out there. These are not items on which we will be taking decisions tonight. They are literally discussion. And at some point in the future, these items might represent workshop topics or broader topics, but our goal is to get them out in the public discussion. If I explained that right? Okay. So the first of the discussion items is a transition and management update. And I'm going to turn to Lauren. And for those of you that don't know, Roger Edwards is here tonight. Roger is with Grand Manners also, and he is in the Orlando area and has responsibility for not just Celebration with Lauren, but yeah, all of Florida. So lucky you. So welcome. Glad to have you with us. Thank you for being here. So Lauren, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so we'll talk about staffing first. As you know, Susanna left us last Friday, so that position is vacant. We have posted it. We have interviewed candidates and we're close to making a selection. We still have the IT administrator reservation agent open. We are actively interviewing candidates as they apply. The community standards manager, an offer was extended on the 2nd, and a tentative start date of the 28th of March is what we're looking at. So we're excited about that.
Lauren, excuse me, you said the community manager was vacant and you're still in the process of interviewing?
Yes.
Okay, because this says that there was an offer extended.
Actually, if you look at the online version, it's been updated.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So the community standards manager, the community manager is still open. We're looking to make an offer soon. The community standards manager, an offer was extended on the 2nd. We have still quite a few park and pool monitors and field monitors open, with some tentative thoughts on how to address those. And other than that, we are pretty much filled up. The exciting thing is this the first full month that we've had an entire full maintenance team. So that'll really help in terms of getting things caught up.
Lauren, I'm sorry, another question. I remember when we were talking about this field monitor business, I suggested that maybe we advertise somewhere in town. Have you done that, or you decided you don't want to do that, or?
So I had discussed that with Nikki, and there were some previous issues with some residents filling those positions because of performance issues. I can go into more detail with you offline on that one, but we are going to do a hiring event here at Town Hall for those positions and advertise that to the community.
So we'll invite people in the community to apply if they'd like. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm excited that we're finally starting to get our staffing pulled together. I know that these 2 spots that still remain open, the community manager, that's obviously a key hire, and we want to make sure we get that right. There had been discussion of a candidate, and then we decided let's go back and revisit that. The community standards manager, again, we've got that offer extended, right? So we're moving there. I also want to just say, and this is editorial, but the staff that's been hired, I'm really excited about. I know Brian's not here tonight, but I would just like to thank all of you on staff and those of you who have remained. And I appreciate that JR is wearing New Orleans Mardi Gras colors tonight. That makes my heart happy. But I think that we have really put together, you have put together an extraordinary staff of people. I'm very excited about what you're doing and what you can do. One of the things that we've asked Celia to do in her role as secretary is to initiate a log of how resident emails and communications with the board, when we pass them on to management, what happens to them? And now we finally have a staff that can work on those things. And so Celia will be logging with management what happens to these things so that when you contact us, it doesn't just go into ether. It doesn't disappear when we lose it. We'll actually be able to track that. And so, and there it is. So I'm excited about that. Any other comments or questions about staffing? Anything?
There is one person's
Yeah.
hand raised online.
Okay, go ahead.
That's Mark Guest.
Who?
Mark, it just says Mark as a first name.
Okay, if you would tell us your name, address, and ownership status, and then speak up.
And unmute your mic, please.
Can you hear us? Can we hear you?
He needs to unmute himself.
You need to unmute yourself. That may require with this program that you sign off and sign back in. That's what I've been told, but
No.
no? No? Okay, Jim says no. Go ahead, Jim. How does he do it?
The configuration's been changed since then. It depends what he's on, but basically where,
All right,
you got it?
you got it? Are you on? I'll tell you what, we'll come back to you when you're unmuted. How's that? Patrick, maybe you can help him out. Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the board? All right, let's move to the second item here, which was the call center report. Lauren, you want to take that?
Sure.
We show the call center reports.
All right. So from February 1 to February 28, there were 900 calls to the call center. That's 20 business days with an average of 45 calls a day. The call center resolution rate was 82% at 735 calls. There were 165 of those calls transferred back to town hall, either via phone or a case created in our system and notification to staff that we need to reach back out. Caller types were 766 residents, 71 closing agents, 18 vendors, 44 other, and 1 board matter, and that was asking questions about the annual meeting. There were a number of call categories and call issues, and you can see that detail.
So from a call issue stand, other is 417 or 46%. We've got to figure out how to break that down. Can you explain why that's so hard, or is that just a pipe dream? So what is the reality?
So I don't think it's necessarily a pipe dream, but as the call center takes a call, they're running through a script and they're running through screens on their computer. And if a resident isn't fully sharing, or the caller isn't fully sharing what they're calling about, then they're clicking through screens to try to get to the point where they can take notes to properly address the call in question. I can have a conversation with the call center manager and see if there's any way that we can break out the other. Maybe Roger has more thoughts on that one.
We just need to get the detail.
I'm sorry, we just.
Well, I'll get the detail for you. I think we can break it down.
Yeah, I mean, because I called, I'm sorry, David.
No, go.
Because I called today the call center because I didn't realize I had Ariel's cell phone number, and I asked him, and they answered professionally, and I said, will you transfer me to 216? And they said yes, and they transferred me, and it took 4 or 5 seconds, and I'm like, well, this isn't bad. So, but that may be an other, and if maybe we need a category called transfer request, or or some stuff like that, which makes it easy, because if 200 of those are transfer requests, then that makes sense, and stuff like that.
I can share any money. It's a lot of, is town hall open today? Are they open on Sunday? What time do you close? Is there gonna be a fortune yard sale? I mean, just random questions that.
And I'd be happy with a category that said random questions.
Yeah, so,
David.
so in that regard, if you look at those 417, they're going to fall out into some sort of categories, 10 or 15 categories. Create new screens, create new categories, so that then the other is really more miscellaneous. So we have said over many months that the call center, how it's being handled, is a work in progress, and changes have been made. That's another change. Other should be very, very tiny.
Yeah, I'm pleased that we've got this many categories here. I think we just continue to narrow it down.
No, and grow the
Well, I
category.
don't mean narrow it down. I mean, identify those.
Yeah, the other would be 1 or 2.
Right?
The only thing that got me was average time on hold, 38 seconds, not too bad. Average time on phone with agent, 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Okay, I understand that. Average time to transfer back to town hall, 1 minute and 51 seconds. Why does it take 2 minutes to transfer a call back to town hall?
So sometimes they're trying to find somebody to pick up the phone because not all of us are at our desks. Or sometimes the agent calls, like when I get calls transferred to me, the agent has the resident or whoever on hold. They call and they say, hey, I have so-and-so on the line. They want to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Can I put them through? So it's counting that conversation time as well.
So about 10 minutes of that is her saying, no, I won't talk to Brian Kinsel.
All right. One more.
One last comment. With call centers, since this has been a hot button, it's important that we move aggressively and making changes. Move quickly so that it works, so the service works.
So again, any comments from the audience here or online on this particular item? I still see a hand up, but I'm assuming that's the same hand.
Can I ask 2 real quick questions?
Let me just, yes, but let me just make sure we're good here. We got anything online?
It's the same individual with their hand up.
Okay, Cindy, go ahead.
What's an inquiry, SOA? Standard operating something?
I'm not sure I can click.
I'm just curious. But the one thing that I don't see on here is if somebody called town hall by mistake, if the call should have been ECDD or EDD or something like that. I bet that that's a bunch of those. And that should be easy to weed out as they come in.
All right, anything else on this topic? See how efficient I can be, Brian?
Good.
All right.
Mark is back.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Mark is back.
Okay, go ahead, speak, please. Hello. Hello?
He's still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi. Who are you?
Right, great, finally. This Teams thing is crap, I've just got to tell you. Zoom is way better. But Lauren, my question is for you. So on the first...
He needs, before you start, we'd just like to identify who you are.
My
And
name
so your
is
name,
Mark.
your address, last
My
name?
name is Mark Hayes. I live at 308 Reeves Street in North Village. So
Okay.
my question is for Lauren. Using the new resident portal, the first week of December, I reported a house, which is the worst house in all of North Village, and nothing has happened to it. Can you please tell me, I mean, covenants should be something that should have hit the ground running. Please tell me what is going on.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. We will ask Lauren to get, do you have communication or the ability to get in touch with Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I can.
Okay. We will ask Lauren to reach you offline and discuss that property, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is it mine?
I'm not saying, but there you go. All right. Thank you. All right, so let's move on. Next item on the discussion agenda is updates for ongoing projects, CROA amenities inventory, and quality grades. There is an executive summary. If you could click onto that, that's a hyperlink. And again, I'm going to turn this over to Lauren.
Generally, I would kick this to Brian because this is his project right now, but he is out. So since the last board meeting, we have pressure washed all playgrounds. We have inspected the East Village passive parks, and those grades have been given. They should be in the packet. Lighting and electrical at the Spring Lake Pool and Gym has been fixed and completed. All CROA facility buildings and roofs have been pressure washed and soft washed. The Memorial Garden stucco repair and painting completed. The Hippodrome Park pressure washing of sidewalks and pergola has been completed. The sidewalk grinding at North Village, Spring Park, Heritage Hall, and Amphitheater has been completed. We are working with 2 different companies to replace playground equipment. The first company that provided us an initial proposal was very high over the budgeted amount in the replacement reserves. When we got that back, we reached back out to them and rewalked the property with them to have them scale back their initial proposal. Brian also walked both properties with another company, and we are waiting on their proposals. Once we have those, we'll put those on for discussion with the board. Mosaic was resodded this week. We are grinding sidewalks at Town Hall this week, pressure washing sidewalks and flats of all CROA facility buildings the week of the 21st. We've solicited proposals from vendors for work on landscape refurbishment, the basketball court resurfacing since our initial contract fell through, painting, standard repairs, rebuilding of the Hippodrome pergola, lighting and electrical issues. And as a final note, Cella service from November 1 to March 3. There were 115 requests put in, 96 have been completed and 19 are pending, and those are all pending vendor proposal.
All right, let me ask you about the one item that I think we're hearing the most about, which is the basketball court. Can we talk a little bit more in detail about the timing on that and where we stand?
So we were notified 2 weeks ago by the original vendor that kept delaying the project that we should probably get proposals from other vendors because they're just not going to be able to get to us in a timely manner. When we found that out, our operations manager reached out to a number of different companies to solicit bids. We have bids from two different companies back. We're waiting on a third. And once those are done, we will put those in front of the board so we can get the ball rolling. One of the vendors specifically said that from the date of signing, we can be on his calendar within 4 to 6 weeks.
Right. I'd like to see that expanded here, but I think the executive summary is actually very good. I like it, but I think we need to publish it. So I think we need, you're doing blast to the community. I think we ought to do a blast to the community here. It's worthy of putting it also in the Friday Flash. And do this once a month, and then people can know we're actually doing something. Because in a board meeting, too few people will actually hear it and see it.
Yeah.
Let's over communicate.
Yeah.
Celia?
I have 2 questions. When you go into the lakeside parking lot, that whole road is our parking lot, right?
I believe so.
That's our property. So in the middle of that road are grates. Cindy and I happened to come across a couple. those grates are supposed to be bolted in to drain water, but those grates are missing the majority of the bolts. So sometimes if a car hits it a certain way, the grate will pop up, and that's a safety hazard. Also, the Jones room. Does anybody, as far as the floor in the Jones room, is there maintenance that goes in there and cleans those floors occasionally?
I believe so, but I'd have to double check.
Because,
Okay, so let's.
It needs cleaning.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Other comments?
Thank you.
Any comments from the community or online? Okay, thank you. We will get this basketball court figured out. Let's go to item number 4, which is the communication framework discussion. I want to begin this with a couple of brief thoughts. I promise, brief. Let me start by saying that this board acknowledges that we have not done a good job of either communicating appropriately, and we have not listened probably as well as we should have, but we are capable of change and improvement. We are capable of doing better. We are capable of finding ways to communicate because that's our desire. I don't know a single member of this board that says I don't want to communicate or I don't want to listen or I'm not interested. That has not been our position. It is difficult to communicate in a community as diverse as this one that uses as many different methods of communication as this one does. We need a coherent communication strategy, and that strategy needs to be informed by a basic commitment to listening. I keep in my pocket this little ear, which I know some of you will find hard to believe, but it's to remind me to listen more and talk less. As we listen to the community, a communications framework has to incorporate how we hear from everyone in the community, not just the loud people or the people on social media or the people that we see at the events that we go to or the people that come to the meetings routinely, but to listen to the broadest number of people. In order to do that, we need a comprehensive framework for what we're going to do. And this board, I think, is committed to finding that and to doing it as quickly as we possibly can. But a good framework, and I'm going to turn this over to David in a minute, but a good framework is not something that you just make up one day. It's not something that happens without some thought and without some direction. And so what the board has done to this point is to ask David to help us begin with a framework document that we will then be able to discuss, bring to the community, tell you what we are thinking about, get your input on, and then begin to move forward. We discussed the possibility of hiring someone as a staff person. That is far too premature. We're not there. We have asked management to develop some ideas, and Lauren and JR are doing that for us right now. We have invited the community to tell us what they think is important, and they are telling us in many different ways, in many different venues. And whether we acknowledge that here tonight by saying, yes, we're reading what you're writing on X social media or in your Twitter feed or your Insta or your TikTok is not really the point. The point is we are listening and we want to know. So I commit on behalf of this board to finding ways to communicate better. I hope tonight we've expressed appropriately our desire to make that happen. And I hope for those of you who are listening and watching online or watching later that you will accept that we are acting in good faith. And that is, I think, the most important piece we can. So with that, I want to turn this over to David to begin the discussion.
Yeah, so the intent tonight is to more formalize input from the board and then the community on this communications framework. Many of you know that I've been active with communication over the years. You may not know that I designed, created, and advocated for a communications course at the university from which I came 25 years ago. And my third or fourth most recent book was on communication, like 4 or 5 years ago. But but the assignment that I'm taking on is going to be 1 to 2 pages, not a book, 1 to 2 pages that outlines the framework. I'm going to start with what is our responsibility with respect to communications for our community. What is our responsibility? We know as a board, and we were reminded of that at an organizational meeting last week, our primary responsibility is not communication, it's fiduciary. It's fiduciary. That's what the law says. That's what we do. Communication, we believe, is also important. So we hire a management company, we do management things, we do events, and we communicate about them. So we believe that's important, but our legal responsibility is fiduciary. So how do we define our responsibility as a board and then for the community? And then part of that gets on with management. What is our philosophy? That's different than responsibility. What is our philosophy about communication? I have some biases, like it should be proactive. It should be multi-generational. It should not rely on a single approach like a brochure or a flyer or social media or the news, celebration news or the private. It should be multifaceted. It should be redundant. So just because we put it on the sign out front of this building is not sufficient. Let's do that. And maybe there's something for emergencies, but anyway, so what is our responsibility? What is our philosophy? And what is our plan? Out of that will likely come some sort of job description or part of a job. We don't know yet, but we need to define the bigger picture first. So I'm committed to drafting that for the board's consideration with input from multiple sources. And I want to do that relatively quickly to honor your mandate or your request or your commitment to pledge to the community. So what I'd like is a little bit of discussion and comments just to help me write. I don't want to write blindly. You've heard some of my initial thoughts.
Thank you. Celia, you were going to say something.
No.
Okay. Comments from the board?
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
I'm reading the book, I'm sorry, that Real Manage gave us about communication. I was just reading an article. But I wanted to ask, because we discussed this at our meeting about posting the agenda on social media, on the front porch, the back porch, and I got called out for turning off commenting from the community. But moving forward, I posted the agenda on the front porch and the back porch, and I left the commenting open, but now we're getting questions, and I'm not going to answer those questions because I'm answering as a board member for the whole board, and sometimes an answer may be incorrect.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Brian.
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go with
Well, no, and what I'm struggling with is responsibility matters, but we're going to have. My fear, and I've been on this board for 4 years or slightly more now, so I can take as much blame as anybody. I have just started responding to social media. I responded to social media this morning. I defended Jackson, defended him last night. We're taking too many cheap shots because we really need to remember here that we have people who want. First off, I've been on this board for 4 years. I don't have 10,000 people coming up to me telling me we have a communication problem. I have a lot of people who tell me they understand. I have people sometimes who say we have a listening problem, and that's all right. We'll deal with listening problems. But most people who want to find us can find us. So we've also got to be careful that we're just not responding to a few. And there are a few on social media who will always drum. And I've had people on social media who I've talked to tell me that they do it just to have fun. Which is why we as a board have to be careful. And we've talked about this as a board, but we haven't really evolved management into this either. I mean, we have communication professional back here, we've got Lauren, we've got other people. Somehow we've got to wind management into this because boards change. Management will be here. So we need a structure that utilizes the skills of management. You know, texting, I have made the comment, I made it
organizational meeting. If I want to get a hold of my grandkids, I don't call them, they won't answer the phone, but I text them, they'll respond to me. You know, we should probably be texting. It's, in this day and age, it's done, we don't. Most of us text if we want to get a hold of each other. So I suspect, and if we get a text every day from Celebration Town Hall, we'll put that in spam. You know, so you can actually get too many communications. I think what Lauren has been doing with her communications has actually been outstanding and has been received well, and I've heard many positive things about them. I want to fix what is wrong, but I really want to understand what is wrong, because right now I have a great fear that a few people would like to drive the conversation to their own benefit versus what is the right answer for the community. And we ought to establish a framework that lives after some of us are off the board. Thanks. And we ought to involve management.
So moving forward, if I post the agenda on Facebook, it's like Lauren sending an email blast out on tonight's agenda, and nobody's making a comment to the email blast. So it's just a point of information to the resident. Here's an extra layer of communication. It shouldn't have to have comments because it's not put there to have comments. It's just the agenda. If you want to ask under certain things, that's what the meeting is for, to come to the meeting and make your comments. So how do you want it addressed? Do you want me not to post the agenda?
I'd like to hear what the rest of the board says, but I would say this. Tonight, we've tried to explain how we would like to interface with the public. That was not understood before tonight's meeting. So I think we want to show some grace to people asking questions because they didn't know how they would be allowed to address us tonight. So that's my first comment. Does anyone else want to respond here? Don't all jump in at once.
I'll ask a question. I'm interested in, at the high level, what needs to be addressed in a 1 to 2 page write-up about our overall communications foundation.
So I think there's some question about how to work in social media.
Of course.
I think Celia's question is a good one about, where do we go from there? Jim, I know you're the youngest guy here probably on the board. Yeah, so we're going to give you the.
There's a term that people use in communication called omnichannel. And I think that's what we want to do. We don't want to have to, we want to try to have some technology that allows us to say, we want this message to go out to these channels, as opposed to 5 different repeated postings. So hopefully we can look into that. Social media is important. Facebook, I was very impressed that you went through all of them, including referring to Instagram as Insta. That was very hip. But I think that that we need to look at that, but we need to look at all areas. You talked about brochures. For instance, right now, do we have the ability for someone to come in and pick up a version of the Friday Flash if they don't do email, for instance, right? I think, some of us can't live without email, but that's not everyone in town. And so I want to make sure that we cover it all. I don't think those details should be in this framework, right?
No.
But the idea of omnichannel, the idea of the breadth of what we want to do, I think should be in there.
Are you talking about the Friday Flash, like a paper version of it?
Yeah.
Do we have that, JR? Is there a way to do that?
Somebody came to the front, they could print it for them.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Other comments from the board? Anyone else want to weigh in here? All right, let me ask if anyone in the audience or online wants to speak to this particular topic.
Charles Richards online wants to.
Okay.
All right, can you hear me?
Can.
Perfect. All right, well, I really appreciate this conversation.
Charles, let me just stop you quickly. Would you just give your name and your address?
Yes, sorry, Charles Richards, 1020 Banks Rose Street. So I appreciate this conversation. I think that communications is obviously really important to the community. And And David, I wanted to go back and just kind of double click on what you talked about it being proactive and multi-generational. I think that's really important, redundant, another really important feature. I think what I'm hearing today is good and positive that there is a commitment to communications. I would advise, so a couple of things just from my perspective, just around communications, hopefully that you can think about. The conversations about the Friday Flash and the social media, channels, tactics, right? You need to start way at the top, the vision, the strategy. And I think, David, you're looking at that and articulating that through this framework conversation. That's really important, right? Like, so, I mean, what do we want to do with communications? What are we trying to do to inform and engage people? What are the messages that we want to get people to have calls to action? And then I think what's also important, and what I would recommend just around communications, right? There are multiple disciplines. So you have internal communications that you need to think about. You have people that are in marketing. You have people that are in public relations. So there are different voices and different ways to talk to people. And I think you just need all of those different disciplines to come together, David and board, and give input on that as you inform and create that framework. And then I think from there, right, then you start looking at the social medias, the channels, the cadence of the communication, the frequency. Brian, I appreciate what you said about over communicating. I think that's important, but obviously, to your point, you don't want things to go to spam, but you need to find that delicate balance. So I appreciate all of this. I think this is a great conversation. One thing that I do just want to put out there, and then I'll yield some time back to the board. I'd send a note to the board just with some thoughts, just as obviously, David, as you start working through this, I do think there's value in considering a committee approach toward communications. I think when you look at the overall structure of the committees right now and just kind of the day-to-day functions within town hall, communications is one, right? We have a technology committee, we have a technology day-to-day, we have a finance committee, we have a finance day-to-day. Communications is a function that is going to live on. It needs to have a dedicated committee because it's going to evolve over time. Messages are going to change, channels are going to change, and there's a lot of functionality between the other committees and the board. So I think there is value in that, obviously, down the road if you see fit. The only other thing I would encourage you with, and Jackson, I appreciate you saying that about the hiring a director. I think that's hopefully a bit premature and hopefully not going to happen just yet. I think that's a bit of an overreaction. So I think everything so far, I'm very encouraged by this, and I certainly appreciate this. So I will yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. For those that don't know, Charles sent a fairly detailed email to the board and to management detailing some of those ideas. Board members have read that. We've commented a bit among ourselves, and it's helpful communication to us. I think the question of a communication committee remains an open question, and as we get the framework, it's something that we want to invite. What I think is exciting to me is that we can come together after an election, that we can say we want to make this community better. We can bring our individual skills and talents and backgrounds to that process, and we can collaborate to find better solutions. And so thank you for spending the time, not just Charles, but everybody that is engaged in that process. This is not a one-off. This is not something we just snap our fingers and fix, but we're committed to doing it. So any other comments? All right.
Just the last comment, that all of this has been very helpful, so thank you. I'll be taking the first stab at this. Everyone will see it. It'll be available for the community. Hope I'll target for our next board meeting. I'll target that.
Great.
You have one more resident hand up too.
Okay, let me take, the resident comment. Sure, go ahead.
That would be Mark again.
Go ahead, Mark. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Hello? All right, let me go to Brian while we're waiting.
What I wanted to say is communication conversation we're going to continue to have in board meetings so that we can actually have public feedback.
Absolutely.
That's what we need.
Absolutely. This will be held in full open view. Mark, you there? I feel a little bit like Edison with the first phone, right? You know, hello, Mr. Watson, can you hear me?
My guess is he's not having the teams again.
I get that. All right, let's move on to item number 5, which is the modification of the Osceola County K-8 school contract. Brian, you want to update us, and then we do have to assign liaisons to that process.
Okay, so we had actually went to a meeting with them. We've got it down to the 2 baseball fields and the field here by the street. The expense that Yellowstone quoted us was $30,000. I met with the Little League group. I met with Alec, who spoke earlier. Little League is putting a lot of effort into it. I do think it needs some effort. I think you still have the question. I mean, I know there's a philosophical question and disagreement on whether we should pay anything or pay something. Some people consider it double taxation. Some people consider it better double tax than nothing done at all. But we still got to resolve the issue. So I think we'll talk ourselves in circles if we have 7 people involved. So we just got to figure out somebody. But I think we should be working with the Little League. The Little League had a couple hundred kids there a couple of weeks from now. I personally feel a responsibility to work with the Little League and make sure that we're actually finding something that's safe for the kids. We've got a tremendous number of resident kids that are there. We're doing other things for residents. I don't think that's a waste of time.
Yeah, let me just say that we're not going to negotiate a contract with anybody in public. That's just not going to happen. Negotiations happen privately, and then we bring the decisions back and we discuss them and vote on them. But the negotiations themselves, school district isn't going to negotiate with us in public. We're not going to negotiate it here from this table. But we need liaisons to go and have those conversations. The first meeting, Cindy attended, Brian attended, our attorney, Tom Slayton, and Lauren was there. So what I'd like to do is get the appointment of 2 liaisons to work on this project. I'd like to ask Brian to continue to do that because he was there. I'm open to who else would like to participate.
I would be happy to continue with Brian. If that's, and I'm kind of light on the committees this time, so.
Okay, Jim, you're raising your hand.
Same, yeah. I would like to be involved in it, given the obvious reason that I have a.
I'm happy for the 2 of them to be involved, and they can call on me when they want to ask me a question.
I'm not
Sure.
a negotiator.
Okay.
You reply.
Well, me.
No.
Well, make
I can help
sure,
with the negotiation. That's up
make
to Tom.
sure when we're negotiating with the school, that we stress to the school that they go to the high school baseball field and see what that looks
That's
like.
not going to happen. You're
No.
asking for something that's not going to happen. So let's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And again, to be clear, once a contract has been proposed and agreed on in form, it will come back to this board for discussion and voting. And there are philosophical decisions to be made about what we want to do. But I don't think that precludes us at this point from having a good faith negotiation with the school board. David?
Yeah, so just in the context of this, and I think we've had some of these earlier discussions, it's what should we be doing, if anything? The contract ends at the end of June. So the question is, what's the appropriate role for CROA? What is the appropriate role? And then as we look at that, what are the conditions? Part of it is going to be cost, part of it might be liability. So all of that needs to be factored in before we would sign anything. So just because, so there may end up being, there is no contract, or it may be that there is a contract and what those conditions are.
Yeah.
So everything is on the table, because is it true that if we do nothing, that the contract lapses?
Yes.
And then it is done and it's on them until there's a new contract?
And that would be stupid on our part to just let it lapse. We need to.
No, we don't want to let it, I'm not proposing that.
No, I know that.
I just want us to make a thorough decision, and everything's on the table, meaning whether because of, like, the, if you will, the double taxation and what is appropriate, and are there other ways of meeting the needs without CROA? Because to me, the question is, what is in the best interest of our residents?
So it's
So what I'd like to do is appoint Brian, Cindy, and Jim as liaisons, and then open it up for conversation of the community. I want to make sure we get that piece done. Is there any opposition to that, or can we nod our heads and say we all agree with that?
We all agree.
Cindy?
I'm okay.
Okay, all right. Now, anyone in the community or online that would like to speak to this question?
Mark is back.
Mark is back. Mark. Hi, Mark.
It's a team's thing.
It's still Teams, isn't it? Mark, we can't hear you.
I'm guessing a board member or two will hear about this later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mark, the best I can suggest is type your comments and send them in and we'll go. Yes, ma'am, come on up. I need you to come up to the microphone and tell us who you are.
You need to come all the way.
I know, I'm sorry.
Mark's open
It's
now.
okay.
Everybody wants to see you.
Okay, ask Mark to hold 1 second while we, go ahead.
Carol George, 114 Parlor in North Village. I just wondered, in the discussion with the school board, whether anything is going to be discussed regarding the vacated, overgrown tennis courts that are on that property, Brian.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
The answer is, in telling them that we would consider taking over the 2 baseball fields and the maintenance of this, they asked what our ask was, and we said you have to fix the 3 tennis courts. So that was what we specified in the negotiation. We said we don't care if they're a tennis court, we don't care if they're a basketball court, but they look like, I used a blunt word. And Tom Slayton said he lived right over here, and he agreed, and they heard it and wrote it down. So I would actually, if we're going to negotiate with them, make that part of the contract, it's got to be cleaned up. It looks
I think
horrible.
that would be a good bargaining.
Yeah.
So that was specifically discussed.
Good. And along those same lines, would residents have access to it? Because currently during school hours, there is no access to those
No,
courts.
I think the honest answer is there's access to those as a pipe dream, but at least then make it something that works for the children, that is safe and looks nice for the community.
But if it's, for instance, made into a basketball court, who's going to use it? Just their gym classes?
Kids, it'll be kids for
Just their
gym
gym
classes, stuff like that.
No community use. That's
And the
disappointing.
the reason is state law. You can't be on school property when there are children there. because
I
under the
understand that,
rule-
but children
so-
aren't there 24/7.
No, but what happens is from the time that a first student arrives or first staff member arrives until the last staff member leaves in the day, that space is not available to the community. So typically, you don't have play before or after 7 a.m. or until 5 p.m. And without lights, that means there's a whole period of time when you don't have play at all.
Even the ball fields that are used for Little League and that, the school has to open them up and provide access
Right.
to be there.
Correct.
So even in the evening, you don't get the courts. I mean,
Yeah, it's the same at the high school. There's no difference.
yeah, so. I mean, I'm just being honest.
It's
They
just
told us-
disappointing because Little League has access to the fields during weekends.
That's weekends.
It would be nice if whatever is going to happen to those abandoned courts
Right.
would
Well,
also have
see-
resident access on the weekends.
See, they're not gonna call them abandoned. They actually want the access from the inside so kids can have them and stuff like that. We talked about the high school and their lawyer was a very nice guy, very confident guy, just said, high schools, in this contract's just not gonna work. So we got it down to,
No.
no, I'm just trying to tell
And the high
you.
school's like over there.
No, I'm
This
just
is
trying to
right
tell
in
you,
the middle of
it's not going to happen. They
That's
just,
just disappointing.
So let me do this. Let me invite you to put your email address in here, and we will continue to communicate with you about this, and we ask that you would
Sure.
let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
All
for
right.
your time.
Jackson,
Mark
can
have
you
a
hear me
question?
now?
Yes. Go ahead, Mark.
Finally. All I wanted to do was congratulate you on your presidency.
Well, my God, why didn't you get on the line earlier? All right.
now that everybody's gone, you picked the right guy.
Thank you, Mark. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. All right. With that,
I have one, the
Okay.
Strasburgers from 611 campus say due diligence by all parties is required. CROA should be a supplement, not a sole source,
What is it? What was that?
as to the school contract.
Sorry, will you reread that?
Due diligence by all parties is required. CROA should be a supplement, not sole source.
yeah, I'm not sure I know exactly what that means. We are not the sole source of funding.
Yeah.
Our contract will be made available once we have it ready for discussion. And so I don't know, who is this that was making?
Mr. Osberger's. I can follow up with him later.
Management will follow up with you and let you know where we are on that. Thank you. It's an interesting, the lawyer in me loves those kind of comments, but I think we want to follow up.
Well, I think if we're being honest, the double taxation argument is impossible to argue against, is whether you're willing to commit $30,000 to have the field in better shape, yes or no.
Right. And that's where we may be coming to. So having concluded that part of tonight's agenda, oh, thank God. Now we come to board comments. I'm going to go around the room.
I think unless I was sleeping, I don't think so. Well, did we, discuss Long Meadow Park and the new equipment and the cost?
That was part of Lauren's conversation.
Lauren is getting the new quotes and everything. We did discuss that.
She mentioned
Long
it.
Meadow?
Yeah,
Yes.
she did. All right, so let's go to board comments. Mr. Kenzel.
Congratulations to all the new officers. Well, I'm happy.
Wow. Pretty good. Cindy, Ms.
I think you
Swisher.
did a marvelous job today, I just want to say.
Yes.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Mrs. McFadden.
I think the way Grand Manis has been going through this transition, they are going in the right direction. I'm so happy about that. Staffing is getting filled. Happy with our new board, and I think there's a lot of positivity. And thank you, Jackson. You did a great job tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Grindle.
I don't have any comments. I think you've worn me out.
Having fun, all right?
Well,
Okay.
get used to it, buddy.
Yeah. Mr. Hayes.
In the interest of you adjourning on time and Brian not being able to throw it up to you for the next week, I will not have any comments today.
Dr. Anderson.
I'll still keep you in the time limit. Thank you for facilitating a good meeting, efficiently done and engaging. Thank you for arranging a different setup so that we can see one another. And then one quick announcement, one of the task items that the prior board had initiated and then put on hold about June was the idea of a new resident welcome in collaboration with the foundation. And so that is alive and well. And a meeting has been set up with the foundation's executive director and then a representative of CDD without representing CDD because that's a legal thing. And then CROA and Grand Manis Management bringing some of their skills in. So that is set up for a couple of weeks from now. So things are moving forward on that for new resident welcome event, whatever that looks like. But thank you for a good meeting and still on time.
Yeah,
You
thanks.
still got 2 minutes.
There you go. So I just want to say thank you to all the members of the board. This is, I'm excited to be part of this board. I'm excited to be collaborating with all of you and with Grand Manners and with Lauren and Roger and this entire staff of people. Thank you all for giving up your evening to be here with us. I have committed to the members of the board to meet one-on-one with members on a regular basis. That may mean every week or every other week as they wish. But I believe that good communication starts between us as a board, and then it extends out into the community. So I thank you all for your time and your investment. Thank you all for being here online and in the room tonight. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here tonight.